Hi everybody and welcome to Riverside Crafts. Today I'm going to show you how I did my Autumn Wreath card. The dies that I used are Riverside Crafts' own, and this leaf set just here, they cut beautifully and they are really nice shapes. I haven't used all the leaves, I've only used a few of them, so I'm just going to take the ones away that I haven't used today for what I'm doing. Oops, put those out the way for a moment. Now, obviously you can see that the leaves are coloured using distress inks. I've used a range of inks, so I've used Spiced Marmalade, Rustic Wilderness, Crackling Campfire and Ground Espresso. Now when you're colouring leaves you tend to think, oh, I'll die cut them and then I'll just add the bit of colour on as I'm going along, and I'll put a bit here. But actually I need a bit of another colour, so I'm going to put a bit of green on and that. So you just sort of you mix your colours a little bit, because that will just give it a more natural look, because if you think about leaves in autumn, they aren't all one colour, so they sort of change and alter as they go with different intensities. So that looks quite pretty. Okay, now I'm using my finger bobs because it means I don't get in a mess in quite so much of a way, because obviously using your inks you get quite a lot of ink on your hands and it's very messy to doing it. So this sort of works it out quite nicely, but rather than doing it like that and getting in a real mess, I was doing something the other day and it made me think. So if I got a piece of card like so, this is my trick for today. This is the little bit of something that I thought about after I'd been doing it for a little bit to make it easier. So I've got my card, take my ink pad directly to my card, give it a bit of a swizzle. I haven't noticed that it's made any difference to my ink pad. I've not noticed me having a problem with colours mixing or it leaving other colours on it. As you can see, it's not all nice and even, but that's fine, because if I use a blending brush and just wiggle it over it, it sort of like evens it up anyway. So put a little bit more red on that bottom there, I think. A bit more red at this corner, a little bit there. Okay. So now when I die cut my leaves, I will automatically have them in the right colours for what I'm looking for. Alright, so now when I die cut, I'm going to use my mini one so it's easier. I don't put lots of them all at once because I don't want to risk my dies getting caught up and messed around, so I'm only going to put a couple on at the time. Okay, do that like so, put that on it, take it through. Now when I'm using a manual die cutter, I always come back. I don't know why, but it's a habit I've developed. So basically they always pass through twice. Not that these dies particularly need it, they come up quite quickly anyway. And I'm using a hammered cardstock, so it's quite thick and quite heavy. I'm just going to move that out of the way a minute, along with those dies, so that we don't get more ink everywhere than we need. Right, so that's out of the way a second. Don't miss the dies. And now I've got easily, and they look better than what I was trying to do. Okay, they've got a much richer colour. They look more covered. It's better at the end of the day. You seem to get more vibrancy than when you're trying to do it with your fingers. You seem to be a bit more reticent about where you're putting your inks. So if you do the whole piece of card in various colours before you start, it sort of looks a bit more natural. Now the only colour that I do still put on very carefully and without much and I use the blending sponge for it, is any brown I'm going to put on the edge, because obviously some of the leaves will have got brown bits on them, but you don't really want a lot of brown on them. You want it literally to be on the edge of what you're doing, so you're only going to go a little bit on it to make it sort of look like it's got a bit of the brown just going on. So I do the odd one, I don't do too many, I just go through the ones I've made up and put a little bit of brown on the edges of some of them. It just sort of helps when it's all put together. Okay, so that's sort of, and it just sort of seems to lift them slightly if you put a bit on the tips. Okay, right, so as you can see, I've got quite a few leaves cut out, all in various colours and looking sort of really nice and autumny. Okay, so that's that bit done. So my next bit is, how did I keep my circle? Well, I cheat. I die cut a circle out. So it is approximately 9 centimeters in diameter, and then I've took out an 8 centimeter circle in the middle. So if you're using a circle cutter, you'll be looking at it going at 9 centimeters and then again at 8, so that you've got the middle bit. The centerpiece that comes out, my 8 centimeter piece, is what I stamp onto. Now the sentiment that I'm using comes from one of the new stamps that we've just got in, the new what they call gnomes from Woodware, and it's just a Sending You Sunshine. I just thought it was a really nice sentiment, so I'm using the sentiment from my new gnome to go in the middle. So that's going to sit there in the middle. I'm just going to, I want a few foam pads in a minute, so I'm just going to get them down ready. And the rest of the time I'm going to be going. So I'm just going to put that to one side for a second, and we'll start on my wreath. Now I'm going to be using my Pinflair book binding glue like I normally do, and I'm just going to put some on my wreath quite happily as I go around. I'm going to pick up some of the leaves. I'm just going to put them at different angles going around it, tucking some in, sort of giving them a bit more of a different shape for it. Trying not to put too many the same next to each other, but also making sure that I'm not doing it in the same order all the way around. So I'm not actually putting the same leaves next to each other in the same order. So a bit more sort of, jumbled is the right word, isn't it? Is sort of less organised. And that, but you can just, the more you put on it, the better it tends to look. Obviously you could use the same technique if you have a die that cuts out holly, and you can do yourself a nice Christmas wreath. If you've got one that cuts out ivy and holly, that looks quite nice. If you wanted to do this with greens, and you could put a little bit of flower and put some little flowers on it for a nice spring wreath, that would look pretty as well. So you've got lots of options with it. It's just you deciding what it is you really want it to do. Just keep going around, adding your colour in and your leaves on as you go, adding them in. And as you can see, the differences in the colours really helps to make it look sort of very rustic and autumn-like. If you've got a die and you've got it's overlapped and it's got a bit out, don't worry about it, because nothing is perfect in nature, so it helps if it's not too perfect with what you're doing. So little nicks out of what you've die cut is fine. You can use your scraps up quite happily, and it's not a problem for this sort of work. I think that's meant to be like a horse chestnut, and this is like an oak leaf type one, so it's quite nice. This one is like a sort of a like a maple or an acer, sycamore, that sort of a leaf. And this is another maple type leaf. If you can see that you've got a little bit of white showing, just put another leaf in on top of it, just to hide what you've got. But having the ring helps you to keep everything going round in a nice circle. Okay, and you just keep adding them, and that one on top of the other as you go, covering up any gaps that you can see, making it look as full as possible. It's a good way of using up your scrap card and bits, and you can make up your leaves and put them in a jar, so you get gradually build up how many you've got. But you can also then always got some leaves coloured ready to put on your other projects when you're doing things. So it's quite a nice way of doing and keeping them, because you've got them all nicely coloured. And if you're doing them and you want them green, do them in different greens together, so that you've got all the greeny colours together blending in nicely. Don't try and get it all too neat in other ones as you're going along. It's a slightly different effect by doing it this way rather than cutting it out of coloured card. Just sort of a bit more natural. Don't forget to change your clocks this weekend, because we're going back for autumn time, so that's, you've got to remember to do that this weekend. And don't forget to pop in the shop and look at the new stamps. We've got some lovely new stamps in, which I shall be popping down on Tuesday, I think, if I can, and having a look this week. Couldn't get in last week when they all arrived. I was too busy. Had a poorly granddaughter. But I will answer all your questions at the end if they've not been answered by the lovely Caroline while I'm doing this, because she often answers your remarks for you and your comments before I even get to it. So if you have got lots of them there and you haven't had chance, then I will answer. I just can't do it while I'm doing this because I can't actually see that part of my phone, because you're all upside down at the moment. It will go quite well. Got a really nice thick one this time, hasn't it? It's gone really quite bushy, which is good. Give it a nice sort of feel. Now remember, you want to be able to tuck, you come to the end, you've got to be able to tuck your leaves in to make it all work for you. So sort of leave yourself space to just tuck a few leaves underneath so that you all joins together and feels a bit more natural. So if you're just sort of needing to put a few more bits in, just go for it, add them in where you think actually that needs to be a little bit fuller. Okay, there we go. I think those ones to one side, didn't need them all. Okay, so let that finish drying a minute. I've got glue everywhere, so I'm just going to clean off this before I put my card down. Otherwise I'm going to end up with a card that's all stuck to what I'm doing. So just give that a second. All right, dry it off. There we go. So here's my card. just going to glue this into the middle. So a little bit of my glue. Sit that into the centre of my card, like so. Now I'm going to turn this upside down because I want some pads on that to raise it up a bit when I put it down so it looks nice. I'm using the Crafter's Companion 3mm sticky pads, foam pads, because they just lift it up a little bit and it's quite nice. And they're a nice sort of height to make it look like it's sort of giving it a little bit of a look nice. So that can go on that, like so. Peel those off. Okay, let's put that in the middle there, like so, lying it down. Okay, and I can see actually I've got a few that I could do with something else under this edge, so I'm just going to put a another here. Just going to put a leaf in just to help it look a bit more like there's something in that bit. It's a bit thicker. Put another little one in. That's the good thing about this, as you're looking at it and you think, oh, I could just do with, you can add things in quite happily. And you can play with and lift your leaves up and mould them. I don't mould them too much because it's got to go through the post. So your 3mm pads actually help lift it up for you quite nicely. And so there's the two cards side by side. This one is a little bit fuller, a bit more richer in colour, but the same style of card, giving you a similar effect. And I hope you've enjoyed that. And happy Halloween, and enjoy your weekend, and don't forget to change your clocks, and join me next week for another live. Not sure what we're going to be doing yet, but we will have something sorted, and I'll let you know. So thank you very much for joining me today, and Riverside Crafts. Bye.